"Hey Trev, hand me that screwdriver." "Alright, just keep it down, Kev. I don't want to blow this thing." The two burglars fiddled and toyed with the lock on the back door of the seemingly vacant home. They'd been watching the property for a while, concluding that whoever owned it must be using it as a vacation home. After many nights of peering into the old-timey barred windows, they took precise counts of all the TVs and jewelry boxes that were inside. Tonight was the night they set their plan into motion. Kev managed to free the deadbolt, the door now swinging open. They'd made it inside. As the warm air rushed out of the house, both of the burglars let out a sigh of relief as their fear of setting off an alarm subsided. The men walked inside as Trevor began to feel around for a light switch, but after flicking it, the lights remained off. "All this money, and they can't even pay a light bill," Kev chuckled as he withdrew his flashlight. He began shining the light around the room, quickly jumping back as a large metal sheet fell from above the door, sealing them into the mysterious house. Kev screamed in a panic as he looked to Trevor for any signs of comfort. Trevor ran over to the door, desperately trying to break past the barrier, but it wouldn't budge. Kev slumped down against the wall, defeated and assuming the worst. Trevor reasoned with Kev, citing that they could go through the house and try to use the front door to escape after they've collected all the valuables. They both had an eerie feeling of being watched. In a paranoid frenzy, they searched the room for any cameras, but they couldn't find any. Kev could feel the sweat pouring off of his face. He paced around as he noticed the subtle hum of a radio that could be heard from the next room. Trevor opened the door, which activated a chute. The men fell into a small pit, falling over each other as they struggled to regain their footing. The flashlight bounced off the floor, the beam of light spinning in a disorienting circle. Kev stumbled over to it, but just before he could pick it up, his foot pressed against a piece of metal and a bear trap closed on his leg. His terrifying screams filled the air as Trevor sat in confusion just feet away. Kev begged and pleaded for Trevor to help him. Trevor snagged the flashlight and shined it onto Kev's leg. He began to gag from the gory, blood-filled wound, the thick iron teeth extruding from the other side of Kev's calf. Trevor activated the small lever on the bottom of the mechanism, which was chained to the floor, but it did nothing. Kev's screams persisted, the wound ripping open as he continued to struggle more and more. After a few more moments of pure panic, his body couldn't endure the pain any longer, and he passed out. Trevor was shaking, terrified of what was happening. He took off his jacket, wrapping Kev's leg as best he could, still trying to look for a way back up. The hole was about 3 times as tall as either of the men. Trevor's mind began to race as he struggled for options. He shined his light around the pit, and on the wall, nearly at the top, was the sloppily sawed-off end of a large pipe. He moved down the light, revealing a small spigot that was just feet above his head. He looked down at Kev, a puddle of blood growing bigger and bigger. Trevor knew that he had to save himself. He jumped a few times, turning the spigot little by little. Eventually, water began shooting out of the pipe, filthy, smelly sewage water. Trevor heaved as he erupted into a vomit following the vile smell that he was forced to breathe. Kev was quickly lost under the foul liquid as the water levels rose, the bubbles from his breath ascending to the surface, but quickly stopping as a few moments passed. The water continued to fill the pit as Trevor swam in place, awaiting his salvation. He managed to grab onto the ledge and pull himself onto the floor. As he looked down into the dirty water, he noticed the red tint it had. His heart began racing as he felt the reality of the situation. Frustrated, he couldn't break him free. His partner in crime, Kev, was gone. Trevor got himself together, still in danger as he continued his efforts to find a way out of this nightmare the burglary had become. The radio they'd heard from before sat atop a small wooden table in the corner of the living room. It had gone silent. The front door began to shake as he jumped back in shock. It resembled a fist-filled knock, so Trevor began to shout for help as he fumbled with the lock on the knob. Even after unlocking the door, it wouldn't budge. He peered through the peephole as he continued to plead for help, but as his eye met the small opening, a rod shot out from inside of it before he could pull his head away. The sharp barbed spike shot right into his retina. Trevor shrieked in a blood-curdling horror, holding his face as he stumbled back onto the floor. As he panicked, Trevor tried to retrieve the steel deeply embedded into his eye, but as he began tugging on it, he could feel his eye coming out as well. Trevor gave up on the idea of removing the spike, and instead sat back, groaning in agony. He peered out of the barred windows with his only usable eye, his vision blurry as blood ran down his face. He pulled out his screwdriver and lock-picking tools, forced to break out the same way the men had broken in. After what seemed like hours of working on the front door, he managed to get it open, now weakened and fatigued. The mid-morning air freshened his nostrils from the foul sewage smell. He began sprinting up the road. He stopped the first car he saw, begging for an ambulance. Trevor told them everything that happened. The stopped car was a neighbor, and he cited that the house had been abandoned for many years. Kev lost his life, and Trevor's eye got infected from the filthy water. He eventually had to get it removed. Since Kev had died in the commission of a burglary, and because of the grotesque circumstances, the state chose to charge Trevor with his murder. The house was torn apart by investigators, and the owner was discovered upstairs, in his bedroom, rotting under his blanket. No one knows why the house was trapped. Some people think it was just a product of the owner's sadistic mind, but if you ask Trevor, he'll tell you what he experienced in the house wasn't just mutilation. It was a mysterious force of pure evil.